Welcome to Christian Life YouTube channel. Today we are discussing evidences in Israel that prove the existence of Jesus Christ. Israel is one of the most excavated places on the planet. Some 300 digs take place each year, including about 50 foreign expeditions from as far away as the United States and Japan, the Antiquities Authority said. About 40,000 artifacts are dug up in Israel each year. Jesus-era perfume vials found in Mary Magdalene's hometown. In 2008, Franciscan archaeologists working in Israel announced that they had found vials of perfume that may have been similar to that used by Mary Magdalene to wash Jesus' feet, Reuters reported. A team of Franciscan archaeologists digging in the biblical town of Magdala in what is now Israel say they have unearthed vials of perfume similar to those that may have been used by the woman said to have washed Jesus' feet. The perfumed ointments were found intact at the bottom of a mud-filled swimming pool, alongside hair and makeup objects. The director of the dig conducted by the group Studium Biblicum Franciscanum told the TerraSanta.net religious website. If chemical analyses confirm it, these could be perfumes and creams similar to those that Mary Magdalene or the sinner cited in the gospel used to anoint Christ's feet, Father Stefano De Luca, the lead archaeologist, told the website. Mary Magdalene is cited in the New Testament as a steadfast disciple of Christ from whom 7 demons were cast out. She is often considered the sinner who anointed Jesus' feet. The discovery of the ointments in Magdala at any rate is of great importance. Even if Mary Magdalene was not the woman who washed Christ's feet, we have in our hands cosmetic products from Christ's time. Magdala was the name of an ancient town near the shores of the Sea of Galilee in what is now northern Israel. A Palestinian Arab village stood near the site until the war at Israel's establishment in 1948, and an Israeli town called Magdala now occupies the area. It's very likely that the woman who anointed Christ's feet used these ointments, or products that were similar in composition and quality, De Luca said. Studium Biblicum Franciscanum supports research in biblical studies but focuses on archaeological excavation of sites linked to the New Testament and early Christianity in the Middle East. Jesus Boat. The Kibbutz Naf Genasar Museum in Kibbutz Genasar is the home for a 24 feet, 2,000-year-old fishing boat found well preserved in the Sea of Galilee mud in 1986. It has been dubbed the Jesus Boat because many scholars are convinced that the boat dates back to the time of Jesus. The Jesus Boat was discovered in 1986 by 2 amateur archaeologists, exploring the Sea of Galilee coast at a time when the water level was low and found the remains of the wooden boat buried in sediment. Professional archaeologists excavated it and found it dates to around 2,000 years ago. There is no evidence that Jesus or his apostles used this specific vessel. Recently, archaeologists discovered a town dating back more than 2,000 years that was located on the shoreline where the boat was found. Kristen Romy wrote in National Geographic, a severe drought had drastically lowered the lake's water level, and as 2 brothers from the community hunted for ancient coins in the mud of the exposed lake bed, they spotted the faint outline of a boat. Archaeologists who examined the vessel found artifacts dating to the Roman era inside and next to the hull. Carbon-14 testing later confirmed the boat's age. It was from roughly the lifetime of Jesus. Efforts to keep the discovery under wraps soon failed, and news of the Jesus Boat sent a stampede of relic hunters scouring the lake shore, threatening the fragile artifact. Just then the rains returned, and the lake level began to rise. The round-the-clock rescue excavation that ensued was an archaeological feat for the record books. A project that normally would take months to plan and execute was completed, start to finish, in just 11 days. Once exposed to air, the boat's waterlogged timbers would quickly disintegrate. So archaeologists supported the remains with a fiberglass frame and polyurethane foam and floated it to safety. Today the treasured boat has pride of place in a museum on the kibbutz, near the spot where it was discovered. Measuring 2 meters wide and 8 meters long, it could have accommodated 13 men. To be candid, it's not much to look at, a skeleton of planks repeatedly patched and repaired until it was finally stripped and scuttled. They had to nurse this boat along until they couldn't nurse it any longer, says Crossan, who likens the vessel to some of those cars you see in Havana. But its value to historians is incalculable, he says. Seeing how hard they had to work to keep that boat afloat tells me a lot about the economics of the Sea of Galilee and the fishing at the time of Jesus. Historical evidence related to Jesus and Sepphoris. Kristen Romy wrote in National Geographic, Jesus' boyhood home was just 5 kilometers from Sepphoris, the Roman provincial capital. Although the city isn't mentioned in the Gospels, an ambitious building campaign fueled by Galilee's ruler, Herod Antipas, would have attracted skilled workers from all the surrounding villages. Many scholars think it's reasonable to imagine Jesus, a young craftsman living nearby, working at Sepphoris, and, like a college freshman, testing the boundaries of his religious upbringing. Source: Kristen Romey, National Geographic, November 28, 2017. Eric and Carol Mayers, Duke University archaeologists and a husband and wife team, have spent 33 years excavating the sprawling site, which became the nexus of a heated academic debate about the Jewishness of Galilee and, by extension, of Jesus himself. Eric Mayers told National Geographic, "It was pretty acrimonious, recalling the decades-long dispute over the influence of a Hellenizing city on a young Jewish peasant. We had to dig through a bivouac from the 1948 war, including a live Syrian shell, to get to these houses. And underneath we found the mikvayot. At least 30 mikvahs, or Jewish ritual baths, dot the residential quarter of Sepphoris, the largest domestic concentration ever found by archaeologists. Along with ceremonial stone vessels and a striking absence of pig bones, they offer clear evidence that even this imperial Roman city remained a very Jewish place during Jesus' formative years. This and other insights gleaned from excavations across Galilee have led to a significant shift in scholarly opinion," says Craig Evans, professor of Christian origins in the School of Christian Thought at Houston Baptist University. "Thanks to archaeology, there's been a big change in thinking, from Jesus the cosmopolitan Hellenist to Jesus the observant Jew." Historical evidence related to Jesus in Capernaum. The largest ancient structure in Capernaum is a partially restored, columned synagogue built in the AD. 4th century, built upon the foundations of a 1st century synagogue where Christ may have taught. Reliefs inside depict figs, pomegranates, and shellfish, and the entrance is guarded by crouching lions, which appear to be in violation of the Jewish prescription against graven images. Nearby, archaeologists discovered a dwelling that was venerated by early Christians. Some scholars believe it is the home of the Apostle Peter. Aside from various references to Capernaum in the Gospels, the earliest literary attestation of Capernaum is from Josephus, who refers to the village in connection with a fertile spring. The Jewish historian reports he spent a night there with a fever during the second year of the Jewish War. For centuries, Capernaum has traditionally been identified as a site located on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee, about 3 miles west of the upper Jordan River. In 1838, Edward Robinson correctly identified there the remains of a synagogue that was partly excavated by Charles Wilson between 1865 and 1866. More extensive excavations took place in the early 20th century, first by Heinrich Kohl and Karl Watzinger and then by Wendelin von Menden. Most recent excavations have revealed 2 synagogues, a white limestone synagogue dating from the AD. 4th and 5th centuries, and a black basalt synagogue dating from the first half of the AD. 1st century. Only foundation walls, gray marble column fragments, and a cobblestone floor remain from the earlier structure, which measured 24.5 by 18.7 meters on the exterior, and possessed walls over a meter thick. The 4th to 5th century limestone synagogue was built on top of the 1st century synagogue. Only the foundation walls and cobblestone floor remain from this earlier building. It is thus the basalt synagogue which is referred to in the 4 Gospels. Kristen Romey wrote in National Geographic, commonly referred to on the Christian tour route as the Town of Jesus, the pilgrimage site of Capernaum today is owned by the Franciscans and surrounded by a high metal fence. A sign at the gate makes clear what's not allowed inside: dogs, guns, cigarettes, and short skirts. Directly beyond the gate is an incongruously modern church mounted on 8 pillars that resembles a spaceship hovering above a pile of ruins. This is St. Peter's Memorial, consecrated in 1990 over one of the biggest discoveries made during the 20th century by archaeologists investigating the historical Jesus. Source: Kristen Romey, National Geographic, November 28, 2017. From its odd perch, the church offers a stunning view of the lake, but all eyes are drawn to the center of the building, where visitors peer over a railing and through a glass floor into the ruins of an octagonal church built some 1,500 years ago. When Franciscan archaeologists excavated beneath the structure in 1968, they discovered that it had been built on the remains of a 1st century house. There was evidence that this private home had been transformed into a public meeting place in a short span of time. By the second half of the 1st century, just a few decades after the crucifixion of Jesus, the home's rough stone walls had been plastered over and household kitchen items replaced with oil lamps, characteristic of a community gathering place. Over the following centuries, entreaties to Christ were etched into the walls, and by the time Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, the dwelling had been expanded into an elaborately decorated house of worship. Since then, the structure has commonly been known as Peter's house, and while it's impossible to determine whether the disciple actually inhabited the home, many scholars say it's possible. Historical evidence related to Jesus in Jerusalem. Kristen Romey wrote in National Geographic, in the New Testament, Jerusalem is the setting for many of his miracles and most dramatic moments: his triumphal entry, his cleansing of the temple, his healing miracles at the pools of Bethesda and Siloam, both of which have been uncovered by archaeologists, his clashes with the religious authorities, his last Passover meal, his agonized prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, his trial and execution, his burial and resurrection. Source: Kristen Romy, National Geographic, November 28, 2017. In Jerusalem, Jesus healed a paralyzed man in a ritual pool surrounded by 5 colonnades called the Pool of Bethesda, reports the Gospel of John. Many scholars doubted that the place existed until archaeologists discovered clear traces of it beneath the ruins of these centuries-old churches. Unlike the disparate stories of Jesus' birth, the 4 Gospels reach much closer agreement in their account of his death. Following his arrival in Jerusalem for Passover, Jesus is brought before the high priest Caiaphas and charged with blasphemy and threats against the temple. Condemned to death by the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, he's crucified on a hill outside the city walls and buried in a rock-cut tomb nearby. An ornate ossuary, or bone box, discovered in a Jerusalem tomb is inscribed with the name Caiaphas, an infamous figure in the Gospels' accounts of Jesus' trial and execution. If it is Caiaphas, the discovery would confirm that the people who play a role in the stories of the New Testament were real and not fictitious, notes archaeologist Eric Klein. Pilate inscription. The Pilate inscription is an inscription found in Caesarea which first proved the existence of Pilate. The inscription is written in Latin on a slab of limestone 82 centimeters high and 65 centimeters wide. The 4 lines of writing are a building dedication with Pontius Pilate as the dedicator. It has been dated to approximately AD 2637 and was discovered in Caesarea, Israel in 1961 by Antonio Frova and now is in the Israel Museum. The inscription reads, "To the honorable gods Tiberium Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, had dedicated." According to PBS, this inscription found at Caesarea Maritima, which refers to Pontius Pilate, is one of the most important discoveries made in the archaeological work of the last 2 decades, precisely because it's the first piece of hard evidence of the existence of Pontius Pilate. Now, for Pilate, of course, we have a number of literary references, both in the Jewish historian, Josephus, and also among the Christian Gospels. But this is the first piece of direct evidence from an archaeological source which actually gives us his name and tells us he was there as governor. The city of Caesarea Maritima was actually the governor's residence. This was the capital city from the perspective of the Roman political administration. So, it would have been where Pontius Pilate would have lived, where he would have had his court. Paula Fredrickson of Boston University told PBS, Pontius Pilate is one of these first round of governors posted to the province of Judea, once it was given over to Roman military governorship. And the stone that we now have from Caesarea is very important. It gives us 3 pieces of information. First, it tells us that Pontius Pilate was the governor. Secondly, it calls him a prefect. That's what we see in line 3 of the text. Thirdly, and in some ways most interestingly, the first line tells us that Pilate had built a Tiberium. What that means is, a temple for the Emperor Tiberius as part of the imperial cult. Thus, here we have, at Caesarea Maritima, a Roman governor building a temple in honor of the Roman emperor. Warehouse in Israel full of stuff from Jesus' time. Reporting from Beit Shemesh, Israel, Daniel Estrin of Associated Press wrote, in a cavernous warehouse where Israel stores its archaeological treasures, an ancient burial box is inscribed with the name of Jesus. Not that Jesus. Archaeologists in Israel say Jesus was a common name in the Holy Land 2,000 years ago, and that they have found about 30 ancient burial boxes inscribed with it. Ahead of Easter, Israel's Antiquities Authority opened up its vast storeroom to reporters for a peek at unearthed artifacts from the time of Jesus. Experts say they have yet to find direct archaeological evidence of Jesus Christ, but in recent years have found a wealth of material that helps fill out historians' understanding of how Jesus may have lived and died. There's good news, said Gideon Avni, head of the Archaeological Division of the Israel Antiquities Authority. Today we can reconstruct very accurately many aspects of the daily life of the time of Christ. Israel is one of the most excavated places on the planet. Some 300 digs take place each year, including about 50 foreign expeditions from as far away as the United States and Japan, the Antiquities Authority said. About 40,000 artifacts are dug up in Israel each year. A third of all the antiquities found attest to the ancient Christian presence in the Holy Land, Avni said. Historians now know how long it took to travel between cities and villages where Jesus preached, and what those places looked like at the time. in a brightly lit, 5,000 square meter warehouse crammed with stacks of ancient jugs and pottery sherds. What the Antiquities Authority calls its Alibaba Cave of Ancient Treasures, officials set up a simple white table with finds from the time of Jesus. It has helped archaeologists reconstruct how the man was crucified, with his feet nailed to the sides of the cross. Abney said Jesus may have been crucified in the same manner, unlike the way the crucifixion is depicted in traditional Christian art. Abney said there is no reason to believe Jesus did not exist just because archaeologists haven't found physical evidence of him. You have to remember that Christ was one among more than 1 million people living during this time in the Holy Land, he said. Yiska Harani, an Israeli scholar of Christianity, said the lack of physical evidence of Jesus is a trivial mystery. Why do we expect in antiquity that there would be some evidence of his existence? Harani said, "It's the reality of human life. It's either rulers or military men who had their memory inscribed in stone and artifacts." She said what remained of Jesus are his words, artifacts from age of Jesus. Inside the Israel Museum warehouse, Daniel Estrin of Associated Press reported there were well-preserved limestone drinking cups and dishes, widely used by Jews in the Holy Land at the time as part of their strict practice to ensure the ritual purity of their food. There was an intricately decorated limestone burial box belonging to a scion of the high priest Caiaphas, known in the New Testament for his involvement in delivering Jesus to the Roman authorities who crucified him. In ancient times, families would gather the bones of the deceased and place them into boxes known as ossuaries. They also showed off a replica of a major artifact located in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, a heel bone pierced by an iron nail with wood fragments on each end, discovered in a Jewish burial box in northern Jerusalem dating to the 1st century AD. To date, it's the only evidence found of a victim of Roman crucifixion buried according to Jewish custom. Across from cardboard boxes marked bones from Bethsaida of the New Testament, a massive stone block sat on a wooden crate on the warehouse floor. The stone bears an apparent carved depiction of the Second Jewish Temple and was discovered in 2009 at the site of an ancient synagogue on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Archaeologists have suggested Jesus may have preached in the synagogue. Magdala map, discovered in a church in Magdala, Jordan, in 1884, the Magdala map is the oldest surviving cartographic depiction of the Holy Land. Created in the form of a mosaic, it dates to somewhere between AD 506 to -565 and originally showed an area that stretched from southern Syria to central Egypt. By the time it was discovered, much of the map was already gone. However, its remains include a detailed depiction of Jerusalem. The bird's eye view shows an oval-shaped walled city in the very center of the map with 6 gates and 21 towers, the colonnaded main thoroughfare, and 36 other identifiable public buildings, churches, and monasteries, writes Jerome Mandel in an article published in the book Trade, Travel, and Exploration in the Middle Ages, an Encyclopedia. Thank you so much for watching our channel. Kindly subscribe.